everyone, my name is Justin Garland, and my wife and I have had the privilege of being the lead pastors of Generational Hope Church for the past 7.5 years. And more than being the pastors for the last 7.5 years, I've attended Generational Hope Church for over 42 years. And we are honored tonight to celebrate with you the rich history that we have as a church. A lot of the stories and the information that we're about to partake of is not just information to me, but I've been a part of a lot of the stories and the revelations and the truths that you're about to hear have changed my life forever. And so we are super honored to celebrate tonight. So join with us as we remember the history and celebrate the story that is Generational Hope Church. In 1946, by faith, a small group of devoted believers from Highline Community Church took the first step toward what would become Generational Hope Church. From humble beginnings next to the Hobart Cemetery, they transitioned to the corner of this blessed property that we now know as Generational Hope Church. In 1948, Tahoma Full Gospel Tabernacle, affectionately known as the Church Up on the Hill, emerged with about 60 members under the guidance of Reverends Cliff Phillips and Floyd Goodwill. Over the years, this church has been led by incredible men of God, each contributing their unique gifts to advance the kingdom of God. In 1952, the leadership was passed to Pastor Charles and Marjorie Van Ness. The church grew, families flourished, and soon the need for a more expansive facility became evident. With unwavering determination, the congregation rallied together, embarking on the construction of a Sunday school wing. This structure became a beacon of hope, nurturing young hearts in the ways of the Lord, embodying the spirit of a kingdom being built. In 1959, Tahoma Full Gospel Tabernacle officially became Tahoma Assembly of God. "1960 marked a turning point as Pastor Glenn Cole took the helm. Under his leadership, the present sanctuary took form, a place that was built to accommodate future generations not yet seen and not yet known. The church went to work. Despite not having a completed roof, the first service was held on Easter Sunday, April 22nd, 1962. The building was later dedicated in October of 1962. Through bonds and the dedication of the faithful, the new church was built by the members of the church, reflecting the shared belief that they were creating something far grander than themselves. A legacy was being birthed. In the early 1960s, the inception of Maple Valley Christian School, now known as Rainier Christian School in South King County, was established and reflected the church's commitment to nurturing the next generation. 1968 brought a new pastor, Einar McGee, and his wife Frances to Maple Valley, who played a crucial role in embodying the love to the lost and hope to the hopeless. Their hearts for the lost and broken would change the course of the church forever. The 70s, the Jesus movement, Tahoma Assembly of God, saw an influx of young adults. They came lost, broken, smelly, and high, but the church loved the unlovely and slowly began to not only see the individual transformation take place, but to see the heart of our church transformed.
Hi, I'm Doug McGee, and my wife's name is Kathy, and my mom and dad, Einar and Frances McGee, came to this pastorate in 1968, and they continued on through 1980. My friends that I met at the church were Tom Hardebeck, Tim Buckley, Ed Leckenby. These people all came out of the culture that I was in formerly. Tom and Ed decided to get a place on the river, little house, and we had koinonia services down there by the river. Ed Leckenby and Tom were both really good musicians. They would develop, songs and put a team together that was we just called ourselves Einer McGee and the Young People. It was quite an experience. And I am so appreciative for what my dad did for this church and for the people that are still even attending here.
Many of the hippies saved during the Jesus Revolution would become core leaders, pastors, and families that would help shape the church for decades to come. This marked the genesis of our generational vision, setting the stage for another Christian K-12 school and future discipleship programs that would mark generational hope.
Howdy, I'm Tom Hardebeck, married to Patty Hardebeck. We have 4 wonderful kids and presently 13 grandkids. This church has been a huge part of my life, and I'm excited to tell a little bit about it. Actually, more than huge. It was 44 years of my life. Let me give you just an undergirding of it all. Was involved in the 60s, involved with a lot of drugs and was a druggie and had done a lot of things with drugs and traveled to Europe, bought pounds of hash, sent them back. Actually, I was living in Issaquah by myself, and I'd come to Maple Valley to buy cocaine. And then one day, I found myself in my living room saying, I don't know if you're alive, God, or not. But God, if you're alive, I'm really sorry for my life. And man, he came into my living room that night and I was born again. Everything about me changed, but I didn't know how it changed or why it changed. I knew nothing because I was never raised in church. But that set me on a tremendous path of discovering who God was and who Jesus was. And all this stuff I had no idea, but I had met him in my living room by myself. And I met this guy by the name of Tim Buckley. He said, you need to be baptized in water. And I said, well, what are you talking about? And he told me a little bit about Romans 6. And I said, okay, where does it, how, where, who? He said, well, my pastor, he'd do it for you. I said, well, who is your pastor? He said, oh, it's this guy named Einer McGee. And I said, well, where is that? He said, well, it's the little church on the hill. So Tim said goodbye. He had something to do, and we hugged. That was wonderful. And I came up immediately. I knocked on Einer McGee's door at the parsonage next to the church. And I said, Pastor, I want to be baptized in water today. And he said, you what? I said, I was told by Tim Buckley I need to be baptized in water. And he said, well, I've never had anyone ask me that. I don't know what to do about that. Why don't you go talk to my son, Doug? He's over there in the church with Joe Landis. They're 2 buddies. That began an incredible story on how I was introduced to this wonderful church. A couple years into my relationship with the church here, Einer McGee called me into his office and he said, I think you have a call on your life. And I said, what do you mean a call on my life? He said, I think you need to be a pastor. And I remember looking at him saying, listen, Einer, one thing I will never do is I will never become a pastor. You know, I was introduced by Einer to a leadership team, and I met this wonderful man named Bob Bridges, and this wonderful elder named Frank Day, and this wonderful elder named Wally Barber. And they were beginning to disciple me in leadership, and we began to talk about, with Einar, the need for Christian education in a school. And through that, we started a Christian school, which was really quite neat. Stan Hughes, another one of my old buddies, he became the principal of the school, and we just started off, but I'll never forget this. I had ran into a family started coming to the church, and they had come from the Catholic Church. Nancy Polreich. She was telling me that she wished she could send her kids to our new Christian school, and one of those kids was named Ed. That young man ended up taking my place as the youth pastor. And he ends up later on, many years later, becoming my senior pastor. What a thrilling God he is to make that all work out in his divine time. Very exciting.
On December 20th, 1980, shortly after a Christmas pageant rehearsal, the hot water tank located in the church basement exploded.
One night, I got a call from Einar McGee, and he says, "Tom, we've been vandalized. Get up here quick." I went, "What?" This is like, 1 o'clock in the morning, 12:30 in the morning, and I hopped in my car and I drove up here, and I remember driving up and the front doors of the church were blown off, and he met me there, and he said, "Look," and we looked inside the sanctuary, and all the about 8 or 9 of the pews were blown up, and we could see down into the basement. And I said, I said, "Einar, if this is vandalism, these guys are really good." I mean, this wasn't vandalism, this was something else. I'll never forget it because this FBI or some investigative guy set all the elders down. So there's Frank and Bob and Wally and Einar and myself. And he said, "Let's start putting this church back together. We're going to start with that room." And we started going through all the rooms, and we came, "What was in this room?" And Frank Day said, "Well, there was a water tank right there." And none of them said anything. None of them. They stood up, they walked outside the door, and they said, "Follow us." And we just followed, and we got outside. We walked around the church, and we found a piece of wood, and these detective guys just started following pieces of wood, and we found the water tank about 200 yards in the neighbor's field, just like tracking a dog. And they never said anything to us. They just went, "Huh." But that began to change the course of the church. And after that, several months after that, Einar came to us as elders and said, "I think it's time for me to retire." Then we began to ask the Lord who the new pastor was to be. And I'll never forget it. I remember the Lord speaking to me one night, and he said, "The name of your new pastor is Dave."
As a major renovation commenced, Pastor Einar McGee felt led of the Lord to contact a young pastor from Spokane to see if he would come and speak and be interested in considering being the next pastor of Tahoma Assembly of God. Sign after sign and word after word would confirm this call. In the spring of 1981, ushered in Pastor Dave and Darlene Easterly and their family to Maple Valley.
Hello, I am Pastor David Easterly. My wife is Darlene. She's the love of my life. I want to talk about my call to Maple Valley. I was in my office, my home office. I had resigned my church in Spokane, and I was just waiting on God's direction for my life. And I heard in my spirit, I heard the Lord say, "You're going to receive a call to Maple Valley." Well, I just kind of pitchforked it, and I kind of felt like it was my own imagination. didn't know, what really it meant. And 2 weeks later, Pastor Einar McGee called me and asked me if I would be willing to come to meet with the leadership of the church, with the elders and the church family, and with the possibility of becoming the next pastor of Tahoma Assembly of God Church. And so we came, and we spent a weekend with the church, spent 6 hours with the elders. We ministered on Sunday, and we just felt all the time that God had spoken, that it was God's will. And so there was much confirmation. And so we came as a family in June of 1981, and we became the pastors of Tahoma Assembly of God Church. And what a great, great, great experience for us. And we love this church immensely.
In 1994, the Master's Commission was born, and Generational Hope launched a journey to invest in the generations.
One of the statements that came to me early on was that everything would be lost if we didn't pass it on to our sons and our daughters, to our next generation. The verse from Malachi chapter 4, that before the great and dreadful day of the Lord, that God would send the prophet, the spirit of Elijah, and he would turn the hearts of the fathers to the children, the hearts of the children to the fathers. And we knew that that was something that God wanted to do.
And all of a sudden, Pastor Dave brought this group from Spokane, and it was college kids that loved Jesus. And I began to see God is doing something about the college kids. I said, Dave, that has really touched my heart. And he said, I've been praying for someone's heart that would be moved towards that ministry. And what it was a ministry of offering college kids a one-year discipleship program. And they called it Master's Commission. I knew that this was the call on my life because earlier the Lord gave me a scripture in Isaiah that said, I will give you the treasures of darkness. And that was these wonderful college kids, these wonderful young adults. They were treasures that needed to be tapped and would be tapped by Kingdom Dreams. This Jim Mabry, who came down to play basketball, ended up to be the young man that came to me and said, Pastor Tom, we need to start this program, and I want to help you and give you all of my energy and all of my strength. So actually together, Jim and I started to actually do a lot of work around the church to change the church and help the church understand the importance of dreaming for the next generation. And I knew now this was the treasures. And it was really wonderful to start dreaming for the next generation because Pastor Dave and I knew this. The zeal of the young man had to be joined with the wisdom of the fathers to make a complete church.
Later in 1994, a renewal ignited in the heart of the pastoral team with a new love for Jesus, setting us on a path that wasn't just for us, but for others to experience the love of Jesus. As the joining of the generations continued, the vision and ministry in world missions and local outreach increased too.
My name is Sarah Hodges, and I've been attending GHC since 1975. I was able to attend the private school from kindergarten through the 3rd grade. I had wonderful teachers in that private school, Sharon Washburn, Joyce Bird. The principal was Mark Fisher. I even attended youth group here under Pastor Tom and then under Pastor Ed. And then had the honor to be a member of the first Master's Commission class in 1994. I came into Master's Commission a broken, wounded young lady who was fiercely independent and had hardened my heart. And God used Master's Commission to transform my life. Master's Commission also opened so many doors to relationship. There were incredible leaders my student year, in particular, Holly Potts, Holly Thompson at the time, Jim Mabry, Pastor Tom and Patty were amazing mentors and leaders. Master's Commission opened the door to travel to my first ever mission trip with Pastor Dave and Darlene Easterly and Earl and Sharon Washburn to the jungles of Nicaragua.
In the late 90s, over 10 families from the church were launched worldwide as missionaries to foreign lands. And in 1999, a vision by 2 church members to see a ministry developed for single moms to receive housing, discipleship, and support. The community churches joined together in a seed fast to raise funds to launch Vine Maple Place. Vine Maple Place continues to serve South King County to prevent and help end homelessness for single-parent families. Embracing our generational vision, in 2002, we became Generational Hope Christian Center and later Generational Hope Church. We continued in discipleship, the fathering vision, reaching our community and nations of the world.
Year of 2003, in December, we did a generational transfer before the body and many of our friends. And we passed on the leadership of the church to Pastor Ed and to Pastor Marcy. And at our transfer service, I handed to Pastor Ed a ship's wheel. And on the ship's wheel, I had inscribed, it says, "Keep your hands on the wheel and your eyes on the gold. Keep the wind in your sails and the truth in your heart. Let courage be your strength and a love for all your passion. The Lord has set her course. Now bring her home." After the transfer of leadership, I think Pastor Ed paid me the highest compliment that anybody could have ever paid me. And what he did is he put 2 of my children, Carrie Ann and Mary Lee, on staff. And I thought if he saw that much value in them, there's nothing that could be a greater compliment to my fathering than that. Thank you, Pastor Ed.
Over the next 13 years, the heart and vision for missions continued to grow for community outreach and evangelism. Pastor Ed brought a church in Maple Valley to have a vision that far stretched our comfort, boundaries, and current reality. He was a man who loved well and dreamed big for the kingdom of God.
Hello, my name is Marcy Polreich, and I have attended this church since 1986. I met a young man in this church who attended Seattle Bible College with me, named Ed Polreich. In 1988, we got married. Pastor Dave Easterly performed our wedding. In 1989, we became pastors here at the church. And from 1989 to 2016, we were on the pastoral staff here at the church in some form of capacity, from being youth pastors to associates, and finally the senior pastors. Ed and I really loved outreach. We loved being a part of the community. We loved being a part of youth. Ed was one that he wanted to do it all, whether it was youth pastoring or being in the community or being an associate or being on the mission field. He wanted to do it all, and of course he wanted others to be a part of it. Ed was one that loved to release people into their calling. He was passionate about life. Sometimes people would say, it's amazing, he just walks in a room and lights it up like a light bulb. And sure enough, that's what he did.
On March 28, 2016, Generational Hope was devastated by the death of Pastor Ed Polreich, pastor and missionary Scott Bowles, and Pastor Stephen Kawesa, a Ugandan pastor, in a tragic car accident while on a mission trip in Uganda, East Africa. Their loss is still felt deep, but their legacy continues to live on in the countless lives that were impacted by Pastor Ed, Pastor Scott, and Pastor Steve. Shortly after the accident, Pastor Justin and Kara Garland were established as the new lead pastors of Generational Hope, and they carried the compassion to see the church healed after such a great loss. Through 75 years of unwavering faith and community, our church has not only been a beacon of generational hope, but also a vessel for carrying God's presence. We've extended this divine touch far beyond our walls, reaching into the heart of our city and across international borders. With love and compassion, we've made a profound difference, embracing those often overlooked and connecting communities around the world. Thank you for being a part of this extraordinary journey. This is our story, and we testify that God is good and faithful. To God be the glory for the things He has done and will continue to do.